Hi there. As I explained in my review of the Smiger guitar, the Smiger Les Paul, I, I'm a 67-year-old who's been basically playing folk guitar for many, many years, since I was 15 indeed, but had never got round to learning to play the guitar as an instrument in its own right. And I was particularly interested in playing blues guitar in the sort of style of Peter Green. That's the long-term ambition. So I was very interested in getting a Les Paul, and I was interested in trying the mod out on it, the famous Peter Green mod where you reverse the polarity on the magnet. And that's what this video is about. Unfortunately, I found that my lovely Q2N Zoom recorder is fine for recording this sort of thing, and it's got a great sound for recording music, but it's not so good on close-up, so the quality is particularly poor, I think, but I still think you'll be able to get the idea of what I'm aiming at. This video is broken down into two sections. The first section deals with the mod itself, and then after that I reassemble it and give you some examples of how the sound has changed. If you want to hear what the original sound is, then look up my review of the Smiger Les Paul. Please forgive my very primitive guitar work. I'm working on it. I hope one day to be able to play a lot better than what I'm playing in this. But, you know, be patient with me. I'm an old dog trying to learn new tricks. Okay? I've loosened off the screws here on the pickup, and I've loosened off the strings. I'll now attempt to take the pickup off without removing the strings. The rather dusty cavity it came out of, and here's the pickup itself, and our first problem, the solder on either side. So let's get the soldering iron out and see what we can do about that. Before we do that, I thought it might be a good idea to take the screws off, the spring-loaded screws which are holding the base plate to the pickup. Before you do that, it's a good idea to take a note of how much of the screw is protruding so that it goes back in under the same tension. It's a good idea to make sure that when you're soldering this, that you do it with the pickup upside down, so any solder that drips out drips onto your... I've put a towel down to catch any liquid solder. Otherwise you could find that the solder will drip down into the further in and make it almost impossible to solder. The other problem is the outer casing acts as a heatsink and tends to take the heat away, so it's really beginning to be a problem. I'm not sure how I'm going to solve this. After several attempts in which I was worried about the heat of the solder affecting the rest of the particularly the inside pickups of the pickups, I thought the most inconvenient way would be to simply use a hacksaw, and that's what I did. I can always add the solder later, no problem, but getting rid of it was a real problem. You can see here the discoloration caused by the heat of the soldering iron. Oh, by the way, you notice here on the I put some tape around the cable. That was really because I was worried that the movement would... the edges are sharp, and I was worried the movement would cut it. So the hacksaw blade's done the trick. That's the two separated, and if you look closely you can see the damage on the enamel that the heat has done from the soldering iron. So I would suggest that you try the hacksaw blade solution to this. So here are our pole pieces, and you can see the magnet. That's the dark shape underneath the two windings. So now we're going to try and loosen that by loosening the screws on the top. At least that's what I've seen on another video. In attempting this, I noticed that while the other screws work quite well, this one at the end here, as you can see, I just pushed it with my finger and my thumb pushed it up. In other words, the screw's knackered, which was a problem of quality control on the company that made him, I suppose. I hope that never proves vital when I'm trying to adjust the... you get what you pay for, as my old dad would have said. Unlike in other videos I've watched where those screws on top actually make a difference and are holding the plate, in this case that's not the case. They don't do anything, so I've got to use those 4 screws there that I just pointed out to loosen it off, I think. Yep, that's done the trick. There's the magnet in all its glory, and it appears to be held in place by wax. Well, we'll see what we can do about getting rid of that and moving on. The wax doesn't seem to be holding it at all. It's being held by magnetism, as you can see. So all I've done now is switch it round, as you've probably seen in other videos. Just simply turn it round north to south, south to north, and let's reassemble it. Right, that's the screws back in. Seems to have done the job. I'm a bit concerned about that loose screw that moves, so what I've decided to do is to drip some candle wax onto it, and hopefully that'll just hold it. I've already adjusted it, so I'll drip some candle wax on and hold it at that, and hopefully, obviously if I ever need to adjust it, I won't be able to, but that's you can see there, I think, that the hole is larger than the screw, and that's been the problem. Curiously, one of the longest parts of this whole process has been waiting for this candle to get enough wax to be able to drip onto where I want it dripped. Instead of resoldering, which will be rather permanent, or at least more difficult to remove, I shall add some candle wax in place of the solders, and then if I decide that this is something I'm really liking, then I'll remove the candle wax and solder it, and that should be an easy job. So there we go. It's not pretty, but it's only a temporary measure. If I decide I don't like it, I can just reverse the whole thing. So that's it. I've put it back in position. Now, as you can notice, it's the normal way round. Some people turn it round the other way. I'm quite puzzled about that, because if the magnet's in this direction now, then it's changed the polarities, north-south or south-north, and if I now switch that round, won't that put the polarity back the other way? Maybe I'm missing something. If anyone can comment on that in the comments section, I'd appreciate an answer. Anyway, it's only 4 screws. What I'll do is I'll record sounds in this position, then I'll change it round later and record it in the other position and see if that makes any difference. I can then decide which one I prefer, I suppose. Here we go. Okay, so I've reassembled it all after the mod, and at the moment I've just put everything up to top, and well, let's hear. This is the bridge pickup, and let's well, just have a listen to that. Okay, this is using the Spark again with the same blues setting that I had for the review of this instrument. Okay, so let's introduce the new, more duck quacking neck pickup. And the combination of the two, with everything full up. So you can hear that it is quacky. which is more or less the sound we were going for. But on the net they advised to lower the volume on it, and in fact that's exactly what when you do that, that changes it considerably. Still got quack, but it's a lot pleasanter sound. I'm taking down the volume on the neck pickup a bit. I can imagine using that in all sorts of situations. Take a bit off on the tones and see if that makes much difference. I suppose a sort of warmer sound, really. But indubitably, it's a very different sound than the original pickup wired in phase had. As I say, I haven't for this reversed the pickup. This is just I reversed the magnet only on this, and yeah, I haven't got a guitar that sounds like this, so this for certain things would be great. And again, you know, it was a cheap model to go on with. It's near enough to the sound that I was hoping for. I shall try switching the pickup round and see if that makes any difference, and come back to you in terms of the internet in a few seconds. Okay, so here we are again. This time I've reversed the polarity is still reversed, but I've turned the pickup the other way around. We'll start off with the bridge pickup, which hasn't been changed in theory. So, nice snappy sound. Okay, so we'll go up to the and again, this is everything with, once again, I've got everything up top. So this is the sound of the neck pickup now. It's going to be, maybe a slight difference in volume because the pots are, having reversed that, I noticed that the distance between the strings and the magnets has changed. So let's have a listen anyway. And now with both pickups. So again, we've got the nice quack, but let's again just ease back on the bridge pickup and see how that changes. makes an incredible difference just easing back. I'll just ease back the volume on the neck pickup and see how that affects it. So in conclusion, I'm not sure about turning that round. I'm not sure if I've lost something that I liked in the other way round. Maybe it's just the height of the pins here, because it actually has got a slope here, so it's gone down about that much. So that might be just the only thing. Other than that, I can't really see. I'll leave it for now and see what your comments are. But other than that difference, I'm not really sure there's a vast amount of difference. There's certainly a big difference between when the switch turned the magnet round, but turning this round doesn't seem to have done that much, as I say, except perhaps lowered the volume of the neck pickup. Not sure I want to do that, so well, I'll wait for your comments, and also I'll listen to this myself, which might help me make a decision. But I'm coming round now to thinking I'll probably just switch that back round and solder it up while I'm doing that, and we'll call that mod done. It was an interesting experiment, and I'm pleased with the guitar all told, especially for the price. So with this mod on, it's become a unique model in my collection. So yeah, all I've got to do now is learn to play the thing a bit better. But I know at my age I'm never going to be a really fast guitarist, and that's not really my interest. I really want to be a nice slow blues man. And if I can get even halfway to that point, then I'll be very pleased indeed. So thank you very much for spending some of your time with me, and I hope you've enjoyed this time and found it useful. And I say, please comment on things, but be gentle. This was definitely my first mod I've ever done on an instrument, and also, as I said before, first review of the instrument in the previous video. Well, not much else I can say now, except bye.